Welcome to Eric's Movie Corner. Today, I'm going to be talking about the 1985 sci-fi comedy classic, Back to the Future. Let's do it. Back to the Future. Is it the best movie ever made? Spoiler alert, no, it's not, but it's real good. It came out in 1985. It starred Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Lea Thompson, and Crispin Glover. Now, this movie is notable for any number of reasons. If you haven't seen it, go catch up with it right now and come back and watch the rest of this, because you need to get it under your belt. This is something you should know about, because it had a huge cultural impact. It was made on a budget of $19 million and ended up pulling on a worldwide box office of $388 million. That's a lot. It was tops at the box office for over 3 months, which is hard to comprehend in 2022 when movies just don't stay in theaters that long anymore. So yeah, it was tops at the box office for 3 months. There is, if you don't know this, spoiler alert, there's a time machine in the movie, and it is made from a DeLorean, which was a car that was a commercial failure, but the people making the movie thought it looked cool, made it into a time machine, and it actually popularized the DeLorean to the point where now they sell aftermarket kits that you can put on a DeLorean to make it look like the time machine in this movie. Also, there's a popular animated television show called Rick and Morty, which were at least partially inspired by the characters of Doc and Marty in this movie. So this movie has had an impact and continues to have an impact as time goes by. So what makes this movie so special? There's a couple different things. One of them is the chemistry between Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox is great. They are a great comedic duo. They both have fantastic comedic timing. And it really is what makes this movie fire on all cylinders. The script is actually used in screenwriting classes as an example of how to do things well. And the filmmakers put a lot of attention to detail into this movie. I'll be diving into that a little bit later. It really makes this movie stand out as far as that goes. Now, as with time travel in any movie, there's going to be some stuff where you go, wait a minute, but if this happened, then that couldn't happen. And it's just inherent with time travel. And that's why time travel doesn't actually exist, because it would break everything. At least if you believe that time exists. I know some people that think that time is a construct and everything is happening all at the same time. Whoa, blow your mind, man. Anyway, Michael J. Fox, at the time of making this movie, was on a wildly successful sitcom called Family Ties. At the time this movie went into production, he was the first choice for the role of Marty. However, the producers of Family Ties would not let him do the movie because at the moment, Meredith Baxter Birney, one of the stars of the show, was pregnant, and therefore Michael J. Fox was carrying a heavier load with his part on the show than he had been. So the producers did not want him splitting his efforts and denied permission for him to work on the movie. So they cast Eric Stoltz in the role. Eric Stoltz apparently would be in character constantly, would not break character, and was a little bit of a distraction on set. So eventually it got to the point where they decided that they could not make this movie with Eric Stoltz in the lead. And luckily at that point, Michael J. Fox's load on the show had lightened a little bit, so they gave him permission to do the movie. However, during the entire shooting of this movie, he was going back and forth from the Family Ties set to the Back to the Future set, working an insane number of hours and getting very little sleep. So kudos to him for putting forth that effort. So I'm not going to show a whole lot of clips for this movie because this movie is riddled with music, which is actually the number one thing that gets you flagged for copyright notices on YouTube. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of that. I will show you a couple clips to delve into some of the attention to detail that the filmmakers did. So right now, yeah, we're going to be going into the plot of the movie. So if you're averse to spoilers and haven't seen it, go watch it, come back and watch the rest. So this movie is very, very funny. And there's a comedian named John Mulaney who did a very funny bit about this movie, because this movie, when you stop and think about it, is very strange. The fact that there's a high school student that's friends with a scientist that's not a member of the staff at the school he goes to is really weird when you stop and think about it. And John Mulaney does a very funny bit about how the pitch for this movie must have gone. I will link it in the description below. So make sure you go check that out, because it is very, very funny. But basically, the premise of this movie is that in the process of testing his time machine, Doc Brown runs into some trouble. Some terrorists show up, actually, because he stole their plutonium. And Marty gets in the time machine and hits the fabled 88 miles an hour, which triggers the flux capacitor and sends him back to the year 1955. A lot of the humor in this movie is him being a fish out of water and experiencing 1955 culture for the first time, and people being very confused about his behavior coming from 1985. There's some great jokes about his jacket in this movie, because he's wearing one of those vests that they think is a life jacket. There's all sorts of great cultural jokes in this movie. It's one of the things that makes it so appealing. At this point, both 1985 and 1955 are in the past. However, when it came out, 1985 was current time. So it's got that going for it. Also, one of the main sources of humor for this movie is that at the beginning of the movie in 1985, we see that Marty's mother is very prudish and does not want her children involved in any hanky-panky of any sort, or doing anything, drinking or smoking or anything like that. And then we go back to 1955 and find out that she was a little bit of a bad girl. And that makes for some humor with Marty experiencing his mother as she was as a teenager. One of the major antagonists in this movie is a character named Biff, who is bullying Marty's dad, George McFly, and there's some great incidents there. One of the best lines in this movie was actually improvised by the actor that plays Biff. It's this right here, when there's a confrontation between Marty and Biff in the cafeteria at the high school.
Since you're new here, I'm gonna cut you a break today. So why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
So as the movie goes on, Biff and Marty have repeated confrontations, including this one right here, which becomes a running theme throughout the rest of the Back to the Future sequels 2 and 3, with Biff always ending up somehow, well, you'll see. So ultimately, we end up with the dilemma of Marty having interrupted the normal pattern of things, and his parents currently will not end up getting together, and therefore he will not end up existing. And this is part of the conversation you'll have with people about whether or not this is actually how time travel would work, and there's paradoxes and everything like that. Yeah, it is what it is. I'm willing to let it go. You should be too. But Marty comes up with a plan that he will take his mother to the dance and try and aggressively make a pass at her in the car, and George will come up and interrupt them and defend Lorraine's honor, and they'll end up getting together, and Marty will end up being born. However, things go wrong, and Biff shows up, and Biff's actually the one in the car when George shows up to be the hero, and this is what ensues.
Oh, I think you got the wrong car, McFly.
George, help me, please.
Just turn around, McFly, and walk away. Are you deaf, McFly? Close the door and beat it.
No, Biff. You leave her alone.
All right, McFly. You're asking for it, and now you're gonna get it.
Biff, you'll break his arm! Biff! Biff! Leave him alone! Let him go! Let him go!
Are you okay?
Yay, George, you stood up for yourself. So the movie ends up having a happy ending. One of the details that I did not catch when I first watched the movie, but is one of the trivia points you can find if you go looking for them, is that at the beginning of the movie, when Marty meets Doc at the mall, it is the Twin Pines Mall, as you see in this clip here. However, when Marty ends up back in 1955, you see he ends up in somebody's barn, and there's a confrontation. He ends up driving away, and you see this guy screaming at him about, "My pine!" Which may seem a little weird. However, once we end up with Marty getting back to 1985, he goes back to the mall to try and save Doc, and notice when he comes running around the corner, the sign now says Lone Pine Mall. So really, they could have left the mall unnamed and not bothered with any of that. Some of the attention to detail I was referring to earlier that makes this movie so good because the filmmakers really cared about the finished product. So, hopefully you have watched Back to the Future and agree with me that it is one of the best science fiction action comedies ever made. I have it in my collection. I would recommend you put it in yours. Thanks for stopping by Eric's Movie Corner to hear me talk about Back to the Future. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like below, hit the subscribe button and the bell if you want to get notified when I post something new. Till next time, thanks for stopping by Eric's Movie Corner.